Lucy Letby. Let's have a little chat about that. This is coming from me, who was a doctor and medical student in health for the best part of 30 years, man and boy, and I led clinical teams. I was medical director. I've been investigated by the GMC myself in my career. I've seen other people investigated. I've had to deal with all sorts of stuff in clinical work, clinical practice, and seen all sorts of mistakes happen in my career and in other people's careers. So this is where this is coming from. These are my observations. It's not whether I think she's innocent or guilty. It is just my reaction to that show and everything that was revealed on the Netflix documentary. Now, the first thing that I must say is that what I say may be triggering to some people. It's not meant to be just my opinions, and if they offend or trigger, apologies in advance. I've seen a lot of people say, why wasn't she absolutely raging when the police arrested her? I think that's not typically how healthcare workers behave. They are professional to a fault. And when somebody is accused of something or when somebody gets arrested, as I've seen happen, the default position is to withdraw into your shell, try and assess, and then come up with the correct responses for that period of time under advice. So her reaction, I would say, is what most healthcare workers would react to. I would say, having watched the documentary, that her defence team were absolutely abysmal, but that's Lucy's problem. The evidence in inverted commas, that was presented, and if this is the evidence that led to the conviction, I think it's abysmal. Handover sheets. Why did she have handover sheets? Well, the first thing to say about handover sheets is that pretty much every clinician takes handover sheets home at some point. I don't think they all take them home and keep them in chronological order, but I've certainly taken handover sheets home. I've got people in my family that are healthcare workers. They've definitely taken them home. Now and again, I've taken them home, actually, if I was concerned that something may happen to a patient and I would want those records in order to refer back to, whether that's for my own personal reflection or if something came of it and say there was something that I thought was a bit off and I may have ended up being asked to give comment on it, then I would have a record. And so maybe that is something that Lucy Letby did. I don't know. But that's one possible explanation. And with the sheer volume of incidents that were happening on that unit, maybe she felt that that was a thing to do, but couldn't say that because it may incriminate her. And the other thing that happens there is that then you get asked, well, why aren't you telling everybody about how unsafe the unit is and the culture that's there? But if you do that in health, you get pilloried. You get absolutely, I mean, certainly when I was working up until a couple of years ago, anybody that stuck the head above the parapet got it chopped off. It's a very toxic place to be, the NHS in general. So the handover sheets thing, yeah, I get the concerns about the chronological order that they were kept in. I do think that's slightly suspicious, but the act of taking handover sheets home, I would say, is very, very common. You wear scrubs typically, and you fold the handover sheets up and you put them in your scrubs, and then next thing you know, you're at home and you've got them. By the time you realise it, you've probably got a week's worth. So it really isn't uncommon. Then that leads into the next bit of their evidence, which seemed to be the big bit, that she was on shift when every single baby passed away or collapsed. And at first glance, that is quite suspicious. But then you realise, as the proper expert said at the end, that she was probably the most senior nurse. She was probably doing more shifts because she needed the money too. So the question would be, why wouldn't she be present when they're understaffed? So I'm sure she was relied upon, and so I don't think that pattern of her being there on every occasion was quite as significant as it was made out to be. if you looked on the screen at the time when they were showing all that stuff, there were lots of other people present for vast majority of the deaths. And in a high dependency unit, you will get babies that die. And I don't say this lightly, but unfortunately, these things tend to come in runs. So you tend to see, and I've seen it myself in units that I've worked in, you'll get a run of deaths that might be a month long or a few months long, and you get more than your average, but over a long enough time frame, they average themselves out. And it's tragic, but it's the case. It's this random thing. In general practice, you might not see a testicular torsion for 4 years, and then you might get 6 in a week. It's weird, and that is definitely something that happens. So if you imagine that there will be deaths in that unit because they're taking high-risk children, if somebody was causing those deaths, it is feasible that somebody else was causing those deaths, and then 1 or 2 happened without somebody causing them. And on those days, those people weren't in. It just so happened that Letby was. So it could be that somebody else was doing it, but she got done for all of them. So that's a possibility that I'm amazed that her defence didn't come up with. Then, I mean, you've got the expert witness. I mean, what a clown, really. You know, I'm always really cynical of expert witnesses. I've seen far too many of them. It's a bit of a gravy train, being honest, when you become an expert witness. You get people that do it as a career because it means that you don't need to see patients anymore. It's a lovely, well-paying job. You get to sit in court and write reports. And fundamentally, a lot of these people they want to be experts for the next job, so they will tell you what you want to know. You know, I shouldn't really say that, but I don't need to have my GMC license anymore. So I would say that could be a possibility. And it just so happened, ironically, that when the author of the paper that he cited and the others that were authors of that paper actually did a proper review, and between them they've produced thousands of written papers, and the expert that the police chose has written no papers. When they went through the full cases, they found zero evidence of any wrongdoing on behalf of Letby. But then the expert witness didn't really accept that. Fascinating. Anyway, the other thing that sticks in my craw about this whole thing is that the department was clearly toxic. It was clearly defective and dysfunctional, and was really struggling to be fit for purpose, to the point that following the Letby prosecution, a lot of the consultants that were there and that whole department were investigated, and the department got downgraded. So this next bit about once Lucy was removed, the deaths stopped. Well, if you suddenly get stopped from taking critically ill babies to normal healthy babies, the deaths will stop, won't they? But that's more because the department was struggling than it was anything to do with Letby. Other evidence, in inverted commas, that was shown was the scribbles to herself. I killed them, all the rest of it. Has nobody else ever felt that it could be their fault that things were happening around them, and private thoughts and stream of consciousness reflection that you write that is for nobody else's eyes could incriminate you? I'm not saying that she is innocent. I'm just saying that there is another explanation for literally everything that was revealed in that documentary. I've seen things on social media about how she made medication errors, and she was having affairs with doctors, and if a baby was ill, she would ring a doctor and ask them to help while she was on shift. Nothing unusual about doctors and nurses having romantic liaisons, and absolutely nothing unusual about healthcare workers ringing their significant other who may have some expertise for their advice. Medication errors, really common. I mean, there must be 100,000 medication errors a day across the NHS. It is just what it is. And, you know, you can't apportion any blame to Letby or say that that has anything to do with the deaths at that unit because of her prior history of having some medication errors. I once got sued for prescribing the wrong eye drops. You know, it's very, very common. So in summary, with all that, is her conviction safe? Well, there was no physical evidence, there was no witnesses, there was no motive, there was no physical evidence, and you had a full panel of genuine experts who say there was no evidence of foul play. So on top of that, every bit of circumstantial evidence that the police or the CPS brought forward has another explanation which is completely plausible to rational thinking people or people that have been in healthcare long enough. So to me, it wasn't a safe conviction, and I think there should be a retrial. Do I think she's innocent or guilty? I genuinely don't know, but that's the point. If you don't know, then you can't convict. So that's my reaction to Letby. It's not an easy topic to discuss, and it's not an easy decision to make, but it cannot possibly be correct that she got convicted on those grounds, assuming that we have the full evidence. There may well be evidence we don't know, in which case all this talk on TikTok is rubbish. But there we go. So that's my 2 pence worth on Lucy Letby. Let me know what you think. Toodles.